you wake up, turn over, and look at what is lying next to you in bed. It's your phone. Without thinking, you are picking it up now. You squint your eyes at the screen as you blind yourself in the darkness. Your thumbs move without having to think. You're still in a haze as your muscle memory takes over, and you hit the one icon needed to activate the pathway from your phone screen into your dopamine receptors. A dull buzz begins emanating from your reward center. While you're still in a haze, you see ads about becoming the person you always wanted to be. You scroll down and down, descending into the abyss. You stare into the empty infinity, and in your half-awake state, you see a bloated J.D. Vance's face, altered to look like a plastic baby staring back at you. You swipe. A rare limited edition Labubu stares back with its empty plastic smile. Its user shaking it at the camera. Swipe. An AI video of a knife slicing open a soda can, and a bunch of tinier soda cans spill out from the cut. It makes perfect sense to you in this fugue state. Your reward center is now hijacked by the all-powerful algorithm. You swipe again. A grown man and his child talk to you about double-chunk chocolate chip cookies from Costco. They love them. They love them so fucking much. Swipe again. Men in unmarked vehicles are abducting someone wearing a keffiyeh off the street. Swipe. High-definition footage from a Ukrainian drone that looks down at a Russian soldier lying in the grass. It drops a grenade. It looks like a little plastic Nerf football in its 3D printed housing. It lands next to the soldier's leg and explodes. Swipe again.
Deeper and deeper into the unconscious of the algorithm. The blind, starving god. It requires sacrifices. It wants blood. Its hunger is endless. It's eating.
Welcome to Nowhere. I'm your host, Keegan Otwell. The world is more connected than it has ever been, we're told. Yet loneliness is an epidemic. This gigantic machine we exist within, capitalism, it has created these unique, unprecedented conditions. It has provided the profit incentive needed for the billionaires, these parasites, to take the one thing about humanity, our ability to connect with each other across language, through music, food, dancing, art, loving, talking, all of it, and it has given them the incentive to harness our own humanity, our desire to be with others, and repackage it and sell it back to us. In our manufactured isolation within this system, where we're working to survive, alone within our own struggles, working different schedules, living different lives, they have packaged and sold back to us this innate human source of joy and love. But they have failed. They could not distill it, could not perfect the laughter shared between friends, the eye contact between lovers, the feeling of being around those people we hold dear that just make us feel safe. They couldn't synthesize that. So they approximate it. They have mutated it to grotesque proportions. They try to distill it. They synthesize it. They create human markets where we become the commodity, where they sell us on the lie that we are together when we are more alone than ever. They profit from our isolation, while at the same time manufacturing our loneliness. Is it dystopian? Sure. We already don't all fucking know all of this. We get it, Keegan. Phone bad, screen bad, grass good. So the commodification of human connection. Why the fuck am I talking about this on this podcast? Well, I'm always looking for ways to widen the scope of what I cover while keeping everything related. So I started asking myself just how far could I back up, zoom out from the issues of homelessness and billionaires and technology and authoritarianism all the way to capitalism itself, and then zooming back in a little bit. I asked myself how I would go about describing the opposite of what I'm out here searching for, the crux of things I hate and try to fight against in my own tiny ways. And if you've noticed, this second season, which started about 6 episodes ago, has been focused on community, finding it, building it, providing for it, protecting it, all in real life, face-to-face scenarios, and real communities, just people and situations. And it hasn't been the easiest thing to do, even finding those people. And for anyone, finding community is inherently difficult, and trying to build it from nothing is even harder. I even recently found myself among people involved locally in mutual aid, and we're all asking ourselves this, like, what can we do? How can we bring people together? So why the fuck do we even need to build community? Like, why don't we already have it? Like, aren't we living in cities surrounded by each other in concrete boxes, stacked stories tall and wide, crammed with humans? Why is there such an absence of community? So that's what this episode is. It's a way for me to address the enemy elephant in the room, crushing our humanity, and to hopefully go about it in a somewhat entertaining way while being able to get out some of my own angst in the process. I've talked to some of the people on the ground doing this stuff, building community, being part of it. So now let's address some of these unseen forces that we're battling against when we try to form a community. The idea of having to build up community would sound rather absurd in times not so long ago when communal living was the norm. I think of this quote I heard about a missionary talking to a local indigenous person about why they should join civilization. And the tribesman says to the missionary, "If your cities are civilized, why are there people starving in your streets? Out here we let no one go hungry. Everyone has a home. So which one is civilized?" But instead of living in collections of people where we take care of each other and make sure no one goes hungry, we decided to become civilized. Someone thought it was just a great fucking idea to figure out how to grow crops and make bread and domesticate animals all the way back in the Fertile Crescent, the cradle of civilization. The first organized civilization is born, and with it comes kings and laws and jobs and money. We build cities where those within that have nothing are condemned and criminalized. Terroristic systems of carceral authority that dictates and bureaucratizes punishment and death, steals away our time, puts us in debt, makes us fear each other. And now I'm trying to figure out how to get back to that community. And it is out there. It exists all over. People are doing it, building lights against the darkness, but those are anomalous to the grander scheme of things. I fear sometimes that all such efforts may just end up being band-aids on the great festering wound of capitalism. But for this episode, let us journey to the center of this digital online world, an invisible maelstrom that consumes our time, that occupies our minds, that steals away our lives moment by moment, offering something in return. Something bright, shiny, filled with rage, cute, beautiful, mad, something that gets a reaction from your central nervous system, gets your blood flowing. This synthetic spiritual connection to something bigger than yourself, to other people, the idea of people. Ideas, memes, sex, opportunity, grinding, hustling, fame, fortune. The dream whispers in your ear while the machine injects each second with so much bullshit that it would steal away all the beautiful silence of the world if we let it. If its form became utterly boundless, nowhere we look will be free from advertising. We'll get fucking McDonald's on top of Mount Everest and advertisements in our dreams. No moment would ever be ours again. An inescapable world of theoretical ad space and marketing opportunities. But let us focus on this idea of connection and community that we're sold. IRL and the internet, in real life, they're becoming the same thing. We now have generations of people who grew up online. Some of their most formative years were spent online. People who went through COVID and were in high school, going through crucial years of the development of their brain and personality and socialization. IRL and the internet are the same for many of these people. What happens online is as real as anything else. In fact, most of us are only aware of what happens in the wider world we exist in because it is made real to us through online media channels of data information and news. So while we're not quite totally there, we still have obviously the physical world. It isn't totally infiltrated, even though you could argue it is. They're obviously not wrong. It's not wrong to see these as the same thing. Internet culture has obviously altered history forever just by existing in the first place, but even specific things like it's reached its tendrils far and wide and altered the very fabric of society. 4chan, the anonymous image board that birthed QAnon, also memed Donald Trump into the White House, you could argue, and many mass shooters forth into the world, like the Christchurch shooter who live-streamed his mosque shooting in New Zealand and went back to his car and played a song made popular on 4chan, made by someone on 4chan. And not that we needed that to know. He left his ghost behind in easily traced data trails, haunting old 4chan boards. In Henry David Thoreau's Walden, he says the famous lines, "The mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. What is called resignation is confirmed desperation. From the desperate city you go into the desperate country. A stereotyped but unconscious despair is concealed even under what are called the games and amusements of mankind. We are a social creature. We crave connection. We need it. You can argue that human connection is the oldest commodity offered by the oldest profession. Ever since money existed, we exchanged it in that manner. Neuroscientists have explained that connection is something that humans need just as much as food, water, and shelter. This is why solitary confinement is considered torture. Everything else has become commodified, an item to be bought and sold, including our own shelter, for which most of us pay money that we would never see again, and never end up owning anything for it. It is a logical conclusion of capitalism that this biological human need for connection would be exploited. If it wasn't Zuckerberg's dumbass that started with a hot or not Harvard website where they non-consensually rated women in their school, it would have been someone else to build the first big platform. Henry David Thoreau also said, "Our inventions are wont to be pretty toys, which distract our attention from serious things. They are but improved means to an unimproved end, an end which it was already but too easy to arrive at, as railroads lead to Boston or New York. We are in great haste to construct a magnetic telegraph from Maine to Texas, but Maine and Texas, it may be, have nothing important to communicate." When Samuel Morse sent that first message by telegraph, the first data package sent using electricity, the first piece of information exchanged, that telegraph read, "What hath God wrought? If only we knew. It will always end up here. We will always create these networks. We are doomed by innovation, a constant need to support the ever-expanding growth of the GDP. If it's not going up, it's dying. What hath God wrought?" The perfect first DM to send to someone. Yes, the first network. Us humans are fucking doomed to create it. You could simulate this world over and over and over again, and every single time some form of the internet is created, except for maybe one iteration where Rome hits an industrial revolution and nukes the planet to shit back in like 1200 AD. But anyways, why? Why do we do this? Why are we doomed in this way? We can look back throughout history at different points where we thought that a new technology would come along and unite the human race. We are always searching for new ways of understanding ourselves. In this speech, Ray Bradbury eloquently speaks about the possibilities of space travel uniting the planet as a planetary species.
So I see space travel as a way of fusing all the races and the nations of man into one group which names itself humanity and looks at the universe and says, there is the enemy, the universe that doesn't wish me to exist and doesn't care if I do. And against that hostility, against the unknowing abyss, I stand and name myself one race on one planet that will go get the work done and survive and make do 1 billion years from now. It's that big.
We are always waiting for the Deus Ex Machina, beckoning in the next thing that will bring the world together, the next technological revolution, the next technology. What will it be? Maybe the nuclear bomb can unite us all in peace. Yes, this new unification through fear as it was called, in the Russell-Einstein Manifesto in 1955. It put forth this argument saying, quote, "We have to learn to think in a new way. Shall we put an end to the human race, or shall mankind renounce war?" Well, unquote. Well, what is it? Could launching humans into space unite us, or maybe the existence of the most devastating weapon of mankind will bring about a new unified world government? Yes, all men will love their neighbors lest they fear nuclear wrath. Its force will end racism and make all of us peaceful, connecting us in song and dance. Finally, the great peace-bringing bomb has arrived. Always, we think we're the fucking social alchemists of the world, bringing about new technology that will totally alter culture in one way, and it does, and we seemingly do it without knowing what devastation we might be unleashing on the world. So what about the beginning of the internet? At UCLA, there is a shrine in a room off a nondescript hallway. Let's listen to Leonard Kleinrock, one of the computer scientists that was there from the beginning, describing what he calls this holy place, this shrine.
Let's enter this very special place. We're now entering a sacred location. It's the location where the internet began. It's a holy place, and we've just come back to 1969 when the critical events of the origin began.
The internet connecting us, the first message that was sent. We had no idea what it would blossom into. And of course, so many people thought this was the technology that would finally do it, that would unite and connect the world in an unprecedented and concrete way, that it would transcend political and national borders, empowering people with the access to information. As John Perry Barlow said in the optimistic early days of 1996, quote, "Governments of the industrial world, you are not welcome among us. You have no sovereignty where we gather." And then Tim Berners-Lee, the man credited with the creation of the World Wide Web, said, quote, "The web is more a social creation than a technical one. I designed it for social effect to help people work together and not as a technical toy," unquote. Let us go back to that shrine, that room, and let us listen to Kleinbach again.
This machine served as the first node of the internet for decades. And it was from here that the first message was sent. A revolution began. And the only record we have of what happened that day is in this log. On October 29th, 1969, at 10:30 at night, we enter that we talked to Stanford Research Institute, host to host, computer to computer. It's very much like when on Columbus's ship, the fellow up on top who first spotted land, he noticed it was, and he basically made an entry saying we spotted land, and this document have at least the same equivalent importance.
The comparison of the computer log to a document from Christopher Columbus's ship, the ship's log that records the first vision of land, is quite the apt analogy. Little did we know what that first digital connection would blossom into, that the first contact would bring with it new diseases, would allow people's private data to be exploited for profit, create new forms of oppression, would radicalize mass shooters and white supremacists, would create online gangs that groom young girls and force them to kill their pets on live stream. No, we could never know how naive we were. Just like Columbus's ship darkening the horizon, the internet was a harbinger for a new world, claimed in the name of progress, one that could never again be undiscovered. And still, just as with Columbus, we're told that this is a good thing, that the people who bring about new forms of technology are geniuses that should be worshipped and even allowed to lead us. One of these was Mark Zuckerberg, who laid out in Facebook's 2012 IPO letter, which was the initial public offering of public stock. He said this, quote, "Facebook was not originally created to be a company. It was built to accomplish a social mission, to make the world more open and connected," end quote. The Surgeon General in 2023 put out a comprehensive report titled Our Epidemic of Loneliness and Isolation, the U.S. Surgeon General's advisory on the healing effects of social connection and community. It is 72 pages long. I'll put the link to the PDF in the show notes. Here the Surgeon General talks about traveling the country, talking to so many Americans from every background that were isolated and lonely, saying things like, quote, "If I disappeared, no one would notice." In it, Dr. Vivek Murthy calls for a movement to mend the social fabric of our nation, the kind of thing I have fantasized about myself, thinking maybe, surely, perhaps the next generation will come along and their counterculture moment will be to eschew the online world for the real one. But so far, that isn't happening. Here again, we broach the absurd subject in this day and age of how to build community, us with our civilizations and cities filled with millions and online social networks. We've lost the natural formation of human connection, local networks of face-to-face human interaction. It is more than just the internet. It's capitalism itself. It extends in a world defined by bureaucracies and systems and rules and the constant struggle for survival. Here is a quote from that comprehensive report. Quote, "We are called to build a movement to mend the social fabric of our nation. It will take all of us, individuals and families, schools and workplaces, healthcare and public health system, technology companies, governments, faith organizations, and communities working together to destigmatize loneliness and change our cultural and policy response to it. It will require reimagining the structures, policies, and programs that shape a community to best support the development of healthy relationships." End quote. Now, this is incredibly ironic that such a truth that is so close to the truth should come from a government agency. You almost saying it there that if we took it to the logical conclusion, we would see that our forms of government itself have to be entirely reworked, if not destroyed outright, to reach this new unity he calls for. He's almost saying it there when he's saying, our schools, workplaces, healthcare, public health systems, technology companies, governments, faith, it's like the whole entire system has to be changed. And it's like, the government that, you're part of, and I know obviously as a health official, it's a little bit different than being a politician, but he's almost, he's almost there to the truth of what it would really take. And then, of course, even more ironic is the insistence by our technocratic overlords that we are more connected than ever. Yes, maybe we were doomed, going back to that first telegraph transmission. What hath God wrought? God is dead. We have wrought God. We have bottled the ether, created the astral plane where we all connect, online alleyways with shady back doors, the main street a conglomeration of carefully constructed windows into human lives. This is our social media feed. Behind every door is a carefully curated gallery. In other places, we are witness to the horrors of humanity. We are more connected than ever. All hail the forefathers, Zuckerberg, Jobs, whoever made Twitter. Then TikTok arrived, a mainline into the heart of our reward centers, a mental injection of dopamine, just one more swiping. They took the algorithm and breathed into it new life, constructing the dealer of fates, so omnipotent not even they could explain its inner work. Its users have crafted bizarre rituals to attain the algorithm's blessings, adapted our language and our culture to appease it. Makes me want to commit sewer slide, unalive. We are in an intricate dance with a formless entity, creating new platforms of reality to jump off of into the void, down the rabbit hole. This idea of connection reminds me of the quote, "If you're not paying for the product, you are the product." That has never become more true with this. Data harvesting has superseded oil production for yearly gross profit. That's what these companies make most of their money off of, besides ad revenue, is by selling our data, our private lives, and every little action and chat and like and where our mouse hovers and how long and what we're looking at. All of that can be sold, can be used against us for marketing, or worse, depending who else gets hold of this data that's being freely traded on the internet. Now, I want to be clear. I know social media isn't going anywhere. I don't even think we should ban platforms that might be becoming the only place where things like genocide can be truly documented. I know there are valuable connections made online. Honestly, that might be one of the problems. What keeps me coming back for more is when I actually experience that brief light of human connection that is not existing because of the technology technology, but in spite of the technology, that twinkle of humanity that remains in there. Because you get that one good moment of connection, a twinkling of that hope, maybe something that just makes you laugh, makes you feel connected, whatever it is. And then you keep scrolling, searching for more of that, keep hitting that button, swiping over and over again. I see my best friend find love on a dating app, and I think maybe I should try that. And then I remind myself that love is there in spite of the dating app. It is something that can't be owned or put into ones and zeros or sold off to other companies, but that doesn't stop them from trying to sell it. So let us, in this episode, keep scrolling. Let us descend down into the inferno, led by beautiful Beatrice, that twinkling of connection to someone else, something else, anything outside of myself, and let's doom scroll down and down through a few circles of hell. As Thoreau said, let us go into the desperate country where despair is concealed under the play and games of mankind. Here, the
Algorithm rules all.
perpetuating feedback loops of hatred and rage. Interfaces designed by perceptual psychologists, experts of addiction, keep people engaged as long as possible, all while internal studies at Meta report on the real-world harm this technology perpetuates. It is unstoppable.
It is the killing floor of the mind, offering an endless conveyor belt of mass-produced slop.
So this realm of social media has a history dating back to before what is even considered the World Wide Web. We can go all the way back to France. There was a service called Minitel offered to millions of users that used a proprietary terminal given for free to phone customers that allowed people to connect. Eventually, it offered chat rooms. This was in the 80s. There have been other networks run by volunteers all the way back to that first ARPANET we talked about earlier. And so always we're extending our reach to each other through technology, trying to connect. And it's honestly, at its heart, it is a beautiful thing, but it's just become corrupted over the years, time after time, by the forces of capitalism and monopolization. So these different platforms are sometimes totally anonymous, where you don't even have a username, pseudonymous, where a username is used, and then with Facebook we started, using our full names. So this technology has been repeatedly presented in different ways, right, throughout history. Places to gather with your friends online, see what they are up to, just to share images, message each other, and that's what Facebook first was, This concept was simple. And Instagram was also simple at first. It was nothing more than a platform to share photos with your friends in a format that looked good with no algorithm. And then Facebook bought it, offering an absurd amount of money back when it was only 13 people who worked at the company. And, he didn't buy it for its size. He bought it because of its velocity, because he saw the potential it had, and he knew that it would be a competitor to Facebook. So he buys it. Eventually, advertising gets introduced, but the driving force here, the sprint towards a shittier service and platform while still being able to be addictive and radicalize its users, is thanks to the use of algorithms to bring you your content. Algorithms homogenize everything from content to content creation, and you can even see all of the online platforms kind of blending into the same thing now, which is just like a format to offer endless scrolling of short form videos, made most famous by TikTok, and then adopted in Reels on Facebook, YouTube Shorts, and whatever they call it on Instagram. So these algorithms have become culture-altering forces, complex systems of recommendation using engagement among other variables to bring you more content it thinks you will like. These systems, which versions of have existed for decades in different forms and industries, they've reached a new level of complexity where not even the teams behind them are completely sure how they work. YouTube's engineering team has been known to ask Mr. Beast, the #1 YouTuber who is known for specifically striking out to win at the algorithm. They've asked him sometimes to enlighten them on the inner workings and how different aspects operate. So what you'll notice when I talk about algorithms and the effect they have is this concept of feedback loops comes up over and over. Algorithms are a kind of feedback loop, making an average of everything, reinforcing what is popular by showing more of it and therefore making it more popular, all while drowning out originality. You end up with a product that is an aberration of the algorithm itself, something that probably no one really wants, but it equates to addiction and more money. So while in the short term these algorithms are causing more engagement to happen and they are making money for these social media platforms, it's also causing what has started to be called the enshittification of the internet, which more on that word later. But back to the beginning. What at first was niche chat rooms scattered across the web was eventually centralized by AOL in the late 90s. This was my first experience with the internet. My main memories of playing games they offered within the browser, I was probably 7, and I remember my 10-year-old brother explaining to me, and maybe my mom also, about bandwidth and what it was. We had dial-up back then. I can remember my mom helping me choose my first email address. And most of my childhood memories, though, are of playing outside. I had a big imagination as a kid. Eventually, some summers it would be just me and my 2 older siblings when my sister was old enough to watch us without the house burning down. I remember building forts in the little patch of woods we called the Enchanted Forest in our backyard. My brother and I would use our imaginations, and as time went on, I have many memories of playing by myself using my imagination. It was something I would end up doing for an embarrassingly long time. But I also got a second wind of being a kid when I was 9 and got 3 younger step-siblings. I probably played games that involved using my imagination up until about 14 or so. I also got my first cell phone at 13 or 14. I think it was 8th grade. I don't remember it specifically. It wasn't a huge moment like getting a game system I really wanted. And it was a flip phone at that time. It might have even just been an old one. I remember forever I was just using my friend Tyson's old cell phones after he upgraded. Back then, texting was the big thing, and I barely even did any of that at all until I had my first girlfriend, and then I racked up way too many 10-cent text messages, which it's funny looking back at how fucking expensive that would still be if all of our text messages cost 10 cents. But back then, texting hadn't become the main form of communication yet. You know, it was like an auxiliary appendage to the phone. Because, yeah, phones were just mostly still phones back then, used to call people. My grandma Wanda grew up during the Great Depression in Oklahoma. She picked cotton when she was 3 years old until her fingers bled. I remember her telling me about how all her family had was each other, and she was smiling when she talked about it. They had their love for each other. When I was a kid, I stayed over at her house, and I remember asking her about her childhood, and I wish I could remember more of those stories, but I can remember the connection she emphasized to her family and how important it was. Not only did they not have any distracting technology, they didn't have much of anything at all. I watched 9/11 happen on TV in elementary school. I was the last generation to grow up without smartphones in middle school and most of high school. Instagram came out when I was a junior in high school. Facebook started using an algorithm to recommend content in 2015, 2 years after I got out of high school. A girl named Molly Russell was born in the early 2000s, after 9/11. Molly was a British schoolgirl from Harrow in northeast London. She loved Harry Potter and the American drama series Riverdale. She started suffering from depression. She messaged multiple celebrities she looked up to who spoke out about mental health awareness, telling them she wanted to kill herself and asking for help. Some of these were even public tweets made at accounts that anyone could see. She committed suicide in 2022 at the age of 14, and in the first of its kind inquest, the coroner stated that she died from an act of self-harm following depression and the results of social media consumption. She had suffered in silence, and different social media applications saw the suicidal content she shared and followed, and the algorithms recommended her more of it. She had received one email from Pinterest suggesting, quote, depression pins you may like, unquote, that included a picture of a bloody razor blade as a suggestion for her board. Suicide rates among among children have dipped up and down since 1975, but since around 2007, they have seen a steady rise. Facebook, as a platform, widened their reach to the entire public in 2006. Dozens of other parents called into a hotline after Molly's death, reporting that they thought social media might have had something to do with their child's death. At the same time, violent crime as a whole has gone down year after year, and the world outside of the home that parents fear their kids are interacting with, that physical world, no longer letting kids just wander the neighborhood, that world could actually be, and probably is, a much safer place than the online world of marketing manipulation, comparison of self, and addictive features designed to keep users engaged. After all, the average amount of time teens and preteens spend on the phone is 7 hours a day. If that would continue for the rest of their lives, they will have spent about half of their waking lives on their cell phone. This risk is not only about the mental battlefield of growing up online, but just the lack of real-life experience and memories made through face-to-face interactions, connections with people. What scares me a lot about this is that we've already forgotten how to form community as a society, and I fear our abilities to organize more in real life, to come together in any form or collective larger than just a group of friends, is being taken away from us. We are living within an experiment conducted by social media corporation. This is an ocean of information, moving at such speeds as to be impossible to moderate by hand. The Silicon Valley ideology is to move fast and break things. But what about when the things you're breaking are the minds of children? They know is the answer. They just don't care. The unstoppable force of innovation, of the endless growth required for capitalism to continue to function, the consuming of companies and the centralization of users to a few platforms, they don't care about the studies starting to come out. One justification you hear tossed around is that every Super Bowl game about 5 people die from a heart attack while watching. The idea being that once you create tech that spans billions of users, there's going to be unavoidable casualties. Also, I know how some of this sounds. I want to say before I go on, I don't blame any people for using these platforms. I'm not trying to shame anyone. My ire is for those data-sucking vampiric overlords of the social simulacrum. I understand even talking about the subject risks treading over territory that many of us have already trod, either willingly or unwillingly, over and over. I risk sounding like an old man talking about how the TV will rot your brain. But I know that the fix is also not just simply telling children to go play outside, and it is definitely not banning social media or adding age limits, which is what is starting to happen. We need to learn how to live with and deal with this technology, and banning it from anyone isn't the way to do that, especially when some of these spaces might be the only spaces children can learn things about trans identity, and social media sites are one of the only places where things like genocide can be documented. For some countries, that's also the only networks people can use to communicate and organize politically, but it needs heavy regulation. But let me talk about my own personal experience, because first and foremost, these apps are a form of addiction. They are created and tailored to be addictive. The same designers who have worked on slot machines have worked on user design for social media companies. So, yeah, I don't look down on anyone who uses this stuff. In fact, I've been one of the worst users. I've had to get an app to put limits on my phone that hijacked that part of my ape brain that still even goes to pick up my phone and click on those apps several times throughout the day, each time being greeted with some motivational quote and a notification that my self-allotted 15 minutes is up. I did this because I decided to do some math of my own with the help of this application, and I realized I was spending almost half of my waking life on my phone. Sure, some of that was emails and maybe a little reading on my Kindle app, but in 10 waking years, if I kept going down this path, 4 of those waking years would have been spent on my phone. I could see myself looking into the past as an old man, mourning all of these moments that I let be stolen away from me by some digital distraction. I am one more victim of this bullshit. I held on to a flip phone up until 2016 or so because I was all too familiar with the dark sorcery at work. I knew that my puny human will wouldn't be enough. The darkest side of this technology isn't always necessarily what we're being shown on the screen. It's what happens to us when we become engulfed and hijacked by these technologies. The constant distraction that can make me forget how to sit with myself. The time stolen away. So much time. Our brains are plastic, malleable, and addiction is one of the most powerful diseases for rewiring your brain. You develop habits around it, begin to rely on it to avoid feeling bad, going through withdrawals. The psychologist that Meta, formerly known as Facebook, employs, knows, and uses these things. Your attention span drops down, reading books becomes difficult. I've experienced all of this. Obviously, anyone who knows me through this podcast will know I've had my own experiences with addiction to alcohol and drugs. At my most internet addicted, it becomes harder for me to think complex thoughts and to be able to communicate my ideas. I become more anxious and exist in a brain fog. I've gone back and forth on this though, and when I get back to reading books, that always changes eventually, and suddenly I am much more adept at communicating ideas once I become used to experiencing long-form ideas instead of a barrage of uninterrupted, unrelated chaos just meant to flood my dopamine receptors. So, if you felt the same way, just know it is very possible to quickly get back to a different headspace. The hardest part is just changing the habits around it. So maybe when I say that I want to talk about the unseen forces we battle when we try to build community, I should say it's the unseen forces I battle when I try to build or find community. The algorithm. Most of the world relies on these arbiters of reality for their perception of the world. Geopolitics, news, war, genocide, portals into humanity, but humanity that is curated by the algorithm. If it bleeds, it leads, and becoming angry is a much easier emotion to access quickly, much more than feeling joy or happiness. So, in a world where our attention is the economy and the content being sold are memes or videos that only last a few seconds, rage bait, endless takes on other people's takes, people screaming at each other in public, racist bullshit, it all floats to the top of the pit. We are more connected than ever, it's true, but what are we connecting to? We have been given these portals, almost like the inverse of a spiritual connection. We get fed things that close us off into our separate echo chambers. There is algorithmic technology used by police called Beware that uses, quote, billions of data points, including arrest reports, property records, commercial databases, deep web searches, and the person's own social media posts, unquote, reported the Washington Post. The threat level for the individual is shown as green, yellow, or red, and the police officer has no idea what the actual data is that has gone into it. So when they get out of the car with their finger on the trigger, so to speak, they are doing the work of an algorithm, one that bureaucratizes death and punishment. Insurance companies use them to automate claim denials. We get everything from songs to items on Amazon to our social media feeds fed to us by algorithms, to even sorting emails. Even to what places and businesses look like in real life have all arrived and become part of our culture through algorithms. Cybernetics pioneer Stafford Beer argued that we tend to use machines to automate structures and processes that were human creations to begin with. He said, quote, "We enshrine in steel, glass, and semiconductors those very limitations of hand, eye, and brain that the computer was invented precisely to transcend," end quote. We pretend the algorithm is an unknowable force and that its outcomes are not the fault of anyone, but they are a result of human systems behaving in human ways, and they cannot absolve us of genocide, violence, or any other harms that these creations may cause. These algorithms are feedback loops that perpetuate more feedback loops, repeating in a fractal-like pattern throughout all forms of social media. Content creators create more brain rot because that is what the algorithm is selling. Over and over you see guides and classes on how to make this shit, videos with two different things happening at once. This is the algorithm perpetuating more of what it recommends because that is what is being made, because that is what is being recommended, because that is what is being made. You get the point. I highly recommend the book Filter World by Kyle Chayka, How Algorithms Flattened Culture. The book is a fascinating look into the history of algorithms, into the present, and their negative effects. Frances Haugen blew the whistle on Facebook back in 2021, providing tens of thousands of pages of document that showed the extent of the internal research and knowledge that their algorithms were causing real-world harm, while they refused to do anything about it. She explained that Facebook put in and then removed what they called civic integrity after the election in 2020, after which the January 6th insurrection happened. She watched them purposefully remove guardrails and knowingly go against internal research that showed the real-world harm they were doing, including in many countries throughout the world. In 2018, the government in Myanmar used Facebook to spread lies about the native people and to incite violence and acceptance of genocide. Haugen said that the root of these problems come from a change Facebook made to its algorithms in 2018. Using the ultimate law of following engagement, the algorithm brought people divisive, hateful content. She said, "It is easier to inspire people to hate than it is to other emotions." It's simple. If they changed the algorithm, there would be less engagement, less time spent on the site, and less money made from ads. She also talked about Instagram and how some teenage girls were saying that Instagram made their thoughts of suicide worse, and some also said that it made their eating disorders worse. She explained that this created a feedback cycle where the worse they feel, the more time they spend on the app. This is from Meta's own internal studies. The bulk of these leaked documents are available on facebookarchive.org, fbarchive.org. In them are many internal chat logs within the company that show the unrest and dissatisfaction of workers who are trying to make a safer platform. It's actually pretty sad to see these people, whose entire jobs are to make the platform more safe, vent their frustrations that nothing is being done and they're being totally ignored. Haugen said that she had watched person after person grind themselves down against Facebook, trying to advocate for a safer platform. Even today, the day I'm writing this episode and recording this, I found an article about more whistleblowers coming out about Facebook. This new group is alleging that Meta is restricting research into how its virtual reality offerings could negatively impact kids and teens. Maybe they learned their lessons about even looking into the harms in the first place. They don't want to create even more documentation that they know of the harms that their tech is causing while continuing to do nothing about it. You know, they're just creating and incriminating evidence. Yeah, these allegations are expected to take center stage at a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing on Tuesday, September 9th, called Hidden Harms, examining whistleblower allegations that Meta buried child safety research. So on the user side of things, you have these feedback loops that lead into radicalization pipelines. YouTube being famous for red-pilling old users, spreading disinformation, and sucking people down conspiracy theory rabbit holes. The red pill is a Matrix reference used mostly by the right-wing and conspiracy subcultures to explain taking the red pill and waking up and seeing the truth. In the movie, Neo is offered the red pill to keep going and to wake up, or the blue pill to go back to sleep. The thing is, to keep people engaged, which is the only goal, no matter the consequences, the content gets more and more extreme over time. It is the natural, logical course of these algorithms, leading to the crystallization of echo chambers, turning into pipelines of radicalization, even if it's just radicalization of despair, what they call the black pill, or being doom-pilled. This nihilistic anti-ideology has even birthed real violence. The ultimate trolls marching into the real world with high-capacity magazines, knockoff AR-15s, and live-streaming cameras. While the users funneled toward these outcomes are usually coming in with certain beliefs already, often hateful ones, and these chambers aren't capturing many well-adjusted normies and converting them, they still create a feedback loop where people can become more desensitized towards violence, and actions they might have once seen as taboo become normalized. These are the incubators for violence, where ultimate trolling of people results in mass shootings. In these parts of the internet, people identify with the lack of human connection, of being rejects who feel condemned by modern society. Here they can count and share grievances among each other, constructing a scary world that hates their existence as white men, where they are actively being replaced. On sites like 8chan, a 4chan offshoot that was created because of the minuscule amount of moderation that existed on 4chan, you'll find high-scored leaderboards for mass shooters, each one of them deemed and called saints by the users. There are two different documentaries that are wonderful, peering into the world of 4chan in general, and the culture. One is called Feels Good Man, about the proliferation of the green frog Pepe as a meme used by the alt-right and its original creator, who never even intended it to break the containment of his webcomic, and him trying to rope it back in. It's a beautiful and thoughtful documentary. It also documents the memeing of Donald Trump into the presidency in 2016. Another one is called TFW No GF, which stands for That Feel When No Girlfriend, a phrase used most often on 4chan message boards. It should be said that 4chan was, for the longest time, where most famous memes would be originally created and then co-opted by the rest of the online world, including, you could even argue, the presidency of Donald Trump, which gained a massive following and traction on 4chan simply because of how mad he made people, as the ultimate troll. The scope and cultural influence of these anonymous message boards should not be overlooked or underestimated. Maybe I'll do a separate episode on them at some point, though there are many other podcasts dedicated to this kind of stuff already that, not specifically to 4chan, but do go into it at certain points. Those are like QAA, Kill the Computer, Western Kabuki, The Worst of All Possible Worlds, and I'm From the Internet, to name a few. What I can't speak on is the possible negative effects on long-term brain development of children. There is one video I've seen that kind of haunts me, of what looks like a 2 or 3 year old child almost completely asleep, and they're swiping endlessly at the air in front of them after having had an iPad in front of them all day. And you know, like I said, there's some rhetorical risks you take talking about this stuff, and one of them is falling into the classic, oh, the TV is rotting your brain, you know. But the actual issues go much deeper than any brain rot. Facebook had a team of leading behavioral psychologists that published medical papers under Facebook's name in medical journals that had all been enticed by money and the chances to experiment with the largest data set known to history. Turns out that's all these academic freaks need. You dangle a large enough data set and they come running, frothing at the mouth to begin their experiments. The most notorious one was when they took people's news feeds and created 2 different sets beside the control. One, they showed more negative posts, and one more positive, to see if it would affect those users and make them more sad or happy. And it did, all without the user's knowledge. So why, you may ask, if they have the power to just show people more happy stuff and make everyone happier, why don't they just do that? Nurture an algorithm that thrives off of positive content and promotes it. The answer is because that shit doesn't fucking sell. You get people too happy and suddenly they no longer need that escape you provide for them. No, you have to give them the hate, inspire their rage, show them the shadows of humanity dancing on the cave wall. You are selling the treatment to the disease that you've created as a platform. So with the addictive design, you know, everything that goes into it, like red notification bubbles being on purpose, those different colors they use, the way they will manipulate notifications and blow yours up with arbitrary recapture notifications if you've been gone for a while in order to try to reel you back in. And, you know, whatever Facebook is now, at the beginning of the company, Zuckerberg said that the only thing you would ever see on your newsfeed would be your friends, people that you care about, that it would never be polluted with ads. And I remember the ad-free Facebook, which is such a quaint time to think back to, but we get it, right? Our phones track us, every aspect of our data is harvested in order to better market ads to us. This whole attention economy is built around advertising. It's quite literally a corporate game of psychological warfare, even without adding the team of the behavioral psychiatrists running experiments on your newsfeed. I did a minimal amount of digging myself, looking into Meta's career option search engine on their website. I typed in the word psychologist. Here are some of the listings that came up. Product design prototyper, and there's multiple postings for this job. As a product design prototyper on the Reality Labs team, you will be working on the cutting edge of virtual and augmented reality experiences. With our team, you will explore, prototype, and build experiences that define the future of how people interact with wearable technology. Join a world-class team experimenting with bold ideas in areas including optics, haptics, tracking, displays, computer vision, user experience, audio, perceptual psychology, and generative AI. Work alongside expert scientists, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, and software engineers to create the technology that makes AR and VR pervasive and universal. Join the adventure of a lifetime, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, the key word there is perceptual psychology. That's where the intended addiction comes in to play. Here's another post called UX Research Manager, Facebook feed. Within Facebook's discovery organization, the feed pillar is seeking a UX research manager to lead our flagship product. Feed is at the center of the knot for Facebook, being the primary surface for engagement and revenue growth. To many of Facebook's users, Feed is Facebook. People go to Facebook's landing page to deepen connections to friends and family, but also want to find inspiration, information, and entertainment. Seamless experiences and hyper-personalized content underlie the success of Feed and ultimately all our products. A successful leader will be devoted to driving measurable improvement for our users and the product. Our UX research team is designing for a broad range of experiences, perspectives, and backgrounds across the globe. Blah, blah, blah. And it goes in to say, we employ a variety of qualitative and quantitative research methods to accomplish our goals, including surveys, usability tests, diary studies, and one-to-one interviews. We value a wide range of perspectives and stem from many different backgrounds, geographically, educationally, and philosophically. We come from industry and academia with roots in anthropology, design research, economics, HCI, human factors, market research, political science, sociology, social computing, and social psychology, among others. So yeah, I don't know if it's just me, but knowing what I do know about Facebook, these job descriptions are kind of ominous. You know, all I hear is like we use every possible data point from many different sources to make our product more alluring. We have experts in fields from every field you can imagine just to like make the Facebook feed, which that's your news feed. That's like if you open up Facebook, that's what you're looking at right away. I don't know, yeah, just very ominous sounding. So, you know, I think tech billionaires would probably argue that humans are the issue here. It's always usually a user issue. We see these same, you know, they would argue probably that we see these same behaviors repeated over and over throughout different information networks in history. You know, even if we look back to Minitel, that France's own form of the internet that used its own proprietary terminal, they had chat rooms on there where people would go to have perhaps the first ever cyber sexual encounters. In the podcast Reply All's episode, The French Connection, they interview a male journalist who made money pretending to be a woman on the chat room back then. Even then, he was commonly greeted by people saying things like, "Suck my dick, whore." But he also goes on to explain other secrets and dark sides of people's lives and trauma that were shared freely with him, surely aided by some of the first anonymous communication. So sure, you can argue that we are the problem here, that if you give us any of these systems along with relative anonymity, how we end up using that is gonna vary, and some of it's gonna be very negative. And sure, you could argue that is our own fault. But this blaming of humanity doesn't work all the way. If us humans were the common denominator, then we would be seeing almost the exact same things playing out across all social media platforms. But the YouTube comment section is a very different place from our Facebook feed, and the pseudonymity of Reddit, which is famous for petty arguments, is very different from the total anonymity of 4chan and its minimal moderation that has allowed some of the worst ideologies to fester and grow like a black mold, all the way to 8chan, the unmoderated aberrant child of 4chan where QAnon took power and where mass shooters are praised. You know, it's when you're creating the technology that is making people addicted, at some point you are one of the main causes of what is happening on those platforms in different ways. You are aiding the worst of humanity, and letting them find each other. And that's like, I mean, you know, when back in the day when you talk about connecting the world, uniting the world, that sounds like a wonderful thing, but at the same time you're also connecting people who all have the same kind of hatred, and these technologies need to take responsibility for the echo chambers they've created where those people can come together and radicalize more people and end up causing violence. But never will you see platforms take responsibility for what happens on their servers. They'll frame themselves as the innocent hosts, the telephone line, simply carrying the data, providing connection to the masses, allowing people across the world to communicate and call each other racial slurs. And they couldn't possibly track and manage every single user on their platform and what they're doing at any given moment, despite the fact that is exactly what they do. These platforms don't remove this kind of content because they don't want to acknowledge the harm that the platforms cause. They want engagement. Like I said earlier, all they care about is keeping users on as long as possible, and the radicalization funnels are great ways of doing that. They also don't have to take responsibility for it, thanks to the United States 1996 Telecommunications Act, which includes in Section 230 a distinction between an open platform like Facebook or 4chan and what users publish on the platform. There's this law from 1996, before we had social media platforms, influencers, AI, disinformation, and school shootings, and it states that, quote, no provider or user of an interactive computer service shall be treated as the publisher or speaker of any information provided by another information content provider, unquote. This is also back at a time when the internet served some 16 million users, which is 0.003% of the current 5.35 billion now online. So you could argue we might need some different fucking laws at this point. There were two early cases that led to Section 230. The 1991 case, Cubby versus CompuServe, which involved an article that defamed Cubby Inc.'s news service Scuttlebutt. Jesus, these names. In this case, it was decided that CompuServe was not liable because they just hosted the service that the forum was on. Then there was the case in 1995, Stratton Oakmont versus Prodigy, heard by the New York Supreme Court, where Prodigy hosted a forum for online financial services. They made an effort to moderate it, and one of their users posted defamatory statements about Stratton Oakmont and its president, and the court decided in Stratton Oakmont's favor because of their efforts to moderate. They said that because they were trying to moderate their forums, they were more editor than host. So this created a paradoxical situation in which those platforms that do zero moderation of its users are not legally liable for their content, and the platforms that do moderate their users are legally liable for all of their content, which obviously didn't make any sense. So in 1996, they signed Section 230, which said Bill Clinton signed it into action, into law, and that law said that essentially that platforms could moderate some content without becoming liable for the rest of the content. So another important case that involves this Section 230 happened much later, after the November 2015 ISIS attacks on Paris that left 130 dead. The family of an American student killed in the attacks held Google, Twitter, and Facebook responsible for their son's death, though mostly Google's YouTube, which provided algorithmic recommendations of ISIS content to the Paris attackers that arguably radicalized them to commit violence. This case made it to the Supreme Court, where there was a chance to reform Section 230 once and for all, and change how the internet was moderated and who was responsible for the proliferation of hate and violence. Throughout the trial, the very old Supreme Court justices struggled to understand simple concepts of the internet, like YouTube thumbnails, and in May of 2023, they ruled in favor of the tech companies. Section 230 remains one of our last hopes to ever reform how algorithms rule the internet, even giving people options on whether or not they want to have algorithmic content, and also showing transparency of how they work could help. But nothing of the sort is happening anytime soon. So this is not a cry for anyone to necessarily stop using social media completely. I want to be very clear that the impetus here is not on the consumer, though we could probably do a better job of making sure children aren't getting the brunt of these hurtful technologies. But it is up to the corporations and the government to hold them accountable. Unfortunately, instead of any laws seeking to reform Section 230, we're now seeing things like the KOSA, or Kid Online Safety Act, whose only answer is to ban children altogether and require age verification, which would just take more of our sensitive data, like our IDs, pictures of our driver's licenses, while also not doing anything to address the inherent harms that will always be lurking within the algorithms, no matter how old you are. Banning young people outright not only prevents people from being able to learn valuable things, especially if they're questioning their own identity, but it also makes them all the more vulnerable when they are introduced to these manipulative technologies after having no experience with them and no media literacy to learn how to deal with marketing manipulation and disinformation. This technology isn't going anywhere, but maybe we can at least fight to make it safer and educate young people on, how to navigate these kinds of online platforms. The other irony of the Kid Online Safety Act fact is that the number one killer of children in the US is gun violence. And instead of requiring these companies to be responsible for the radicalization and proliferation of hateful rhetoric and incitement to violence that happens on their platforms, causing some of this gun violence and mass shootings, and instead of them putting in place possible warning systems for users about to commit violence who often leak their plans on social media or elsewhere ahead of time, we are simply banning children instead. It is a backwards reaction embraced by a geriatric Congress that has no understanding of how this technology works. But instead of me waxing poetic about the evils of social media and its various forms, let's hear some actual personal experience from some users of the internet. But first, let's get a little peek behind the scenes of the proliferation of brain rot from one of its content creators. This comes from a user on the subreddit social media, which is used for professionals trying to make money with the technology. So this post is called How I Growth Hacked Instagram. For years I tried filming content, being original, building an audience, and putting in lots of effort like Uncle Gary V was saying. I don't know who that is. What did that get me? $3.50. No, but seriously, like $8 after months of effort. I wasted way more trying to buy engagement, which is nonsense. Don't waste your money. Here's what I did instead. 1. I decided to stop trying to be so unique or original and instead to scroll Instagram Reels and start copying whatever I saw on my feed. That's literally it. 2. I also realized that most of the reels were comment farming using mini chat, which I think is a way to use bots. Like saying, comment banana and I'll send you my guide, or something of value. Others were telling people to comment I love God and such. Since these videos are doing this, it's hard to compete if you rely only on authentic comments. Needless to say, I started doing this on every post. 3. I started making brain rot. Yeah, really. Just the Reddit stories and texting stories template on Vubo with the Minecraft gameplay in background. My entire Instagram feed was full of this stuff, so I decided if you can't beat them, join them. Needless to say, those reels got more views than I ever got before with videos I edited for hours. LOL. 4. Now I was getting views but didn't know how to monetize. After consistently crossing 20k views per video with doing 50 to 500k, I got a DM from an influencer outreach coordinator. They paid me to mention their dating app in my video. With brand sponsorships, I finally hit 5k in a single month. Problem was I was spending way too much time emailing back and forth just to get payment. Still not worth quitting my day job. There are also lots of scammers, so ask for 50% deposit upfront and never trust otherwise. Blah blah blah, still couldn't pass that. But yeah, essentially just goes on to explain why they're making brain rot. They end it by saying stop overthinking and just start scrolling Instagram Reels and copying what you see, which is like, oh, that's very sage advice, like just steal. Here's one of the first comments at the top. Congrats, you're the problem. Rather than making anything of value, you make brain rot to monetize it. This isn't a growth hack, this isn't a content model, it's literally garbage. The reason you're struggling to scale, it's because you don't have anything that brands want or are willing to pay you for because you're making garbage. And guess what? You're pigeonholed into making garbage forever. Blah blah blah. This other person said, I got 15 million views last month for my clients and a good chunk of those came from just copying what already works. Here's a good one. Oh, so you're one of those people that creates and posts pure mindless garbage that little kids watch? The videos that serve no purpose whatsoever, I guess, but to manipulate kids into liking, subscribing, etc. by ending shorts with like and subscribe if you want your mom to go to heaven, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, that's kind of a look into how the algorithm also is influencing what people create, and it creates that feedback loop of more and more of the same, which creates a kind of decay of quality over time. So yeah, that's just a little disgusting look behind the scenes. You know, it's hard to hate on people for trying to make money, and I think that post, yeah, it's just showing a lot more about the industry itself. And this is about the enshittification of social media and other apps, just making more of the slop that is already popular. It's another one of those feedback loops. So this is the other side of algorithms. The filling of feeds with AI slop and brain rot content designed to reel in children and anyone with shortened attention span by showing more than one thing at a time in one video. Because that's the other side of this. It's the active rotting of these platforms being brought about by the algorithm. And that's where this word enshittification comes from. It was made famous by a journalist and author to describe this and things that are happening on these platforms platforms, and also like on Google, which is like being juiced with AI, and paid for search optimization, which is just creating a useless search engine at this point. And most people go to Reddit to search things now, where you can find real life users talking about whatever you're trying to look up. But here's a quote from Cory Doctorow, the journalist, explaining his concept of enshittification. Quote, "Here is how platforms die. First, they are good to their users. Then, they abuse their users to make things better for their business customers. Finally, they abuse those business customers to claw back all the value for themselves. Then, they die. I call this enshittification, and it is a seemingly inevitable consequence arising from the combination of the ease of changing how a platform allocates value, combined with the nature of a two-sided market where a platform sits between buyers and sellers, hold each hostage to the other, raking off an ever larger share of the value passed between them." So it's another kind of description of an even larger feedback loop outside of the algorithm, in between the people, the business customers, and the users themselves. A feedback loop to just get more and more cash. This is a good explanation of how capitalism doesn't even promote the innovation that Silicon Valley wants you to believe it's bringing into the world. The most recent new technology we've seen come about is AI, and every single fucking company has jumped on it, and nothing new is really getting made anymore. And even AI, large language models, have reached as far as they can get because they only become more complex by consuming larger data sets. So once you've consumed all of the data in the world, there's nothing left to consume. So these claims that they're making artificial general intelligence are just bullshit. Large language models aren't even the right substrate for that to happen. That would have to be a totally new technology. And all of these companies are investing in this shit, and it's just creating an economic bubble as corporations create technology without a use case, infusing all of their platforms and devices with it, and hoping that the users will find the use case, all the while asking for more and more money as the profit is yet to turn. It's one of the things making the internet a shittier place, enabling this slop to be created at breakneck speeds, an oceanic flow of utter bullshit that drowns out anything original or thoughtful for the feedback loops of the algorithms. So, alright, let's hear now from some of the victims of social media explain in their own words. This post is from Reddit. It says, "I am severely addicted to social media and I don't know what to do anymore. Please help, I am desperate." Hello everyone, I am 20 female and I can say that I'm very much addicted to social media and my phone, and I pretty much fried my brain for the last 2 years. The thing is, before I was 18, my parents controlled and restricted my screen time, and I only used my phone on summer break, but once I reached 18, it's like you unleash a beast. I felt like I lost self-control. Just a quick to say there, that's a very good example of why banning this technology won't help in the long run. Anyways, she continues, "My screen time can exceed 10 hours a day sometimes. I tried deleting the apps from the phone, but I reached out from my laptop and iPad. I used a website blocker and I found myself playing games or binge watching a TV show or a movie. It's like my brain would try to do anything besides sitting with its own thoughts or just focusing on my studies. I reached a point where my phone addiction is seriously affecting my grades and my mental health. If anyone is reading this, please, I am begging you for some help because I'm very desperate and I feel very stuck." And then there's a lot of people on here who say they have similar problems. A lot of people suggest moderation. One person here is suggesting to delete an app a week. Different apps like the ones I downloaded. Here's another post, said, "How do you handle social media addiction?" It says, "I took a step back and realized that I have severe social media addiction. I have TikTok, Reddit, Twitter, Instagram. Per my phone statistics, I spend approximately 16 hours on these social media apps." So that's crazy. That's literally only using 8 hours left to sleep. She continues, "It's gotten to the point where I could be listening to a YouTube video on my laptop while simultaneously scrolling through my TikTok feed. Bottom line is, it's officially out of control. But those dopamine hits, though. I'm 20 and in college and have no real responsibilities, but this is killing me. I feel it killing my already poor attention span. Advice appreciated." And people suggest to turn off notifications. Honestly, it's a constant struggle. And then here's another post. "Social media addiction is ruining my life." And this is in the addiction subreddit. "For the last 2 years, I spent close to 5 or 6 hours staring at my phone, mostly from YouTube, and ever since I got to college, it has become way worse. I sometimes will look at the screen time thing and settings, and it's been close to 12 hours. I usually average about 9 to 10 hours a day, and it has just completely consumed my life. I barely leave my dorm other than to get food and go to the gym. I barely have any hobbies. There is not much activity going on throughout campus due to COVID, but now I get anxiety every time I think of going anywhere. Oh yeah, this post is from 5 years ago too. I've tried setting restrictions on my phones and deleting the apps, but it's just easier for me to take those restrictions off and re-download apps, and I always justify to myself in some way why I can do it. Getting desperate to quit, but I get super bad anxiety when I'm doing nothing and bored, and I just turn right to my phone. If anyone has any suggestions of what I could do to stop this, I would literally try anything, to be honest. And then another suggestion of like moderation, use less apps. Here's a response that says, someone said, I'm usually 12 to 14 hours per day if I'm not working. It beats being drunk and doing drugs, though. Then the original poster responded, both are just super wasteful, though, and I'm worried I'm doing lots of harm to my eyes, just as some people do to their livers or hearts. And that person responded, there's nothing else to do on a day off other than go to the gym or watch TV. So that's kind of a depressing answer to someone trying to reach out. You know, here's someone asking for help, and they're just kind of being told, like, so what? It's better than drinking or smoking. This is the kind of thinking that worries me a lot. It's like time itself is something that we have to battle. I don't know if it comes from always saying things like, I can't wait for this day or week to be over, because ever since we're children, we're learning to dread school, which is our work week, to count by the minutes and hours, and I feel like this mentality teaches us that time is like something we're battling with that must be passed. It's always a chore to get through. But get through to what? What happens when, like me, you discover you're spending most of your waking life scrolling? Maybe this is the result of using social media apps to occupy any of our time. We become more used to every moment needing to be occupied and forget how to occupy it otherwise. I see this in some of these online accounts of people who are addicted. They talk about having more than one screen going. I myself have been addicted to alcohol, drugs, technology, and I would argue that actually smoking and drinking might be better for you. At least it would get you out of the house. And while I'm being a bit hyperbolic, this actually is my greatest fear when it comes to addiction. Not dying from drug overdoses or being incarcerated, but living a life of quiet desperation, of moments passed through and forgotten, of never quite being able to be present, of descending within myself or an app until I cannot escape. You know, it is often said in 12-step programs that the opposite of addiction is connection, and I truly believe that. I even go one step further and say that my personal form of spirituality is in connecting to the world outside of myself, whether it be people, nature, the night sky, and I practice that spirituality by making those connections and trying to have a positive impact on that world around me, and just trying to be part of something bigger than myself. But what happens when your addiction is connection? This is the nefarious nature of these digital addictions. They trick you into thinking you are connected to the world around you, when you are only connecting to one corporation's gateway into reality. They're giving you the disease while they sell you the cure. This is their ultimate feedback loop, the creation of loneliness and isolation through their product that then has users using more of the product to feel less lonely and isolated, battling the conditions created in the first place. There's another post here where someone's asking for help for their elderly father who's become addicted, not getting out of the house anymore, 75, he's addicted to social media. And once again, people are just kind of telling the original poster to leave him alone. Who cares? He's old. The first comment response that's at the top says, who cares? I plan when I'm at that age to float away on a cloud of heroin, whatever that means. I guess they plan to get addicted to heroin at that age. And, you know, this just shows another side of the proliferation of this quiet desperation, working your whole life to finally get to the age where you can engage in a heroin addiction, I guess? Like, what's the fucking point? Why not just kill yourself? Sorry, I mean, why not just commit sewer slide? Seriously, though, at some point, it's like we have to take a step back and just be like, wait, why am I alive again? Is it just to work and go home and like look at a screen and then work more and then get old and then find another way to get through that? I don't know. It's important, though, to look at these systems within the larger realm of capitalism itself. When all of our interactions with humans outside the home are based on transactions of capital where we play different roles, always playing different roles like customer or cashier or service provider or bus driver or grocery bagger, barista, waiter, very often customer, but almost never just neighbor or friend or confidant. Always, it's so impersonal. We are all on our way to somewhere else. The separation of work and home has extended into our personal lives. We're told the world is a scary place. People are angry and most of all lonely, so who can blame us for seeking connection wherever we can find it? But this is not the way back up. This is only the way further downward into these technologies. We are not connecting to people, but instead descending further within ourselves, relying on technology to fix, manage, and control all of our emotions, every single moment to, you heard those people saying that they can't sit with their own thoughts, and I can relate to that. That's the main thing in addiction, is like you're using a substance to escape that moment, those feelings, to control your feelings, and that's exactly what this technology does. Yeah, this system has been too successful in separating us, pitting us against each other, atomizing our lives and our work. The gig economy even takes away coworkers from us because they know we are stronger together. They are scared of us connecting in real life. It terrifies them. They will always have new technology to try to engage us, bring us back into the fold. Because the connection we exhibit in real life, face to face, it cannot be measured. It cannot be harvested for data. The interactions can't be monitored. The building of community outside all of this in real life, it's the one place where we still have our power, our own dominion, which is why they must at all costs have us engage with their systems, because they know we are more powerful than them, and they're scared. And we must always remember this, that together we have more power. We can choose whether or not we operate in these systems because we are the ones participating in these systems. Don't let them take away your power and sell it back to you. They will co-opt your movements, your dreams and inspirations. They will turn everything and every inch of our lives into a product, suffocated in plastic if we let them, and we cannot let them. Let's be the light for each other down here in this endless void we navigate together. Let us love each other. Let us argue. Let us just do it in person, face to face. There is hope. Stay tuned for the next episode in this series where I look at AI and the effort of corporations to remove the human entirely and automate that sense of connection. I have an interview with an anthropologist studying at the University of Helsinki who has talked to people using AI for intimate relationships, therapy, and more. And yeah, thank you so much for listening, and please rate and review the podcast on your app of choice. It helps me a lot. And share with anyone you think would find these topics interesting. I also want to thank the people who have donated to my coffee account, Ko-Fi. I don't know how you say that. Recently, it's like the buy me a coffee thing. Yeah, there's like 3 of you that just did yesterday, and it really, really means a lot to me. And if anyone does want to support me and support the podcast, I'll put that link in the show notes. And if you do, you'll be helping me like recoup costs on audio equipment, pay subscription fees to podcasting video chat platform that I use, and you'll be helping me get closer to doing video, and also be helping me do things like at the end of October, I'm planning to go to New Orleans to cover the Dirty Kid Memorial there, which is like all the unhoused travelers get together to mourn people they've lost. So yeah, you'll be helping me do all that kind of stuff, and hopefully if I'm doing my job right, you'll be helping me platform voices that aren't usually heard. But yeah, stay tuned for more episodes, and I'm going to be doing a couple more about technology, including that interview. So yeah, thank you. Until next time, goodbye.